Welcome back to Boilers and Beyond. I'm Jordan Jones. Purdue basketball tipped off the new calendar year with a pair of Big Ten victories to further establish itself as the team to beat in the Big Ten. Now, it hopes to continue to take care of business this week. Plus, on the topic of the Big Ten, is the league really as bad as it seems? Going to get into that on the way out today. If you don't already, be sure to follow the show on Twitter at Boilers Beyond. A whole lot to talk about right now as we're in the heart of Big Ten season, as the football transfer portal continues to wind down a little bit. A couple new commits for Purdue over the weekend. Lots to talk about there on Twitter. Be sure to follow. And you can always send in questions on Twitter at Boilers Beyond or email me at boilersandbeyondpod@gmail.com. And be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. I have a feeling you guys are going to be interested in everything there is to say about the Boilermakers as we wind towards the end of the regular season and all that is left to take place this year for Purdue. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss that. Let's get into it. Purdue opened up the calendar year, the resumption of Big Ten play, really the heart of Big Ten play. You know, there are those 2 games in December, but this is when it feels like Big Ten basketball is really back, when you have the classic doubleheader on Big Ten Network with Robbie Hummel doing one game and Stephen Bardo doing the other. That's when Big Ten basketball really feels like it's back, and that's where we're at here. Purdue gets a 67-53 win over Maryland on Tuesday, and then on Friday, Purdue takes down number 9 Illinois 83-78. So Purdue now sits at 3-1 in Big Ten play. It's in really good shape for that 26th Big Ten title that it's pursuing this year. This was a big week because Purdue is favored in both these games. Purdue will be favored in every game it plays this year. Besides, I can't remember if Purdue is favored against Arizona or not, but Purdue's going to be the favorite in every game it plays from here on out. That doesn't mean Purdue's going to win every game. It'll win most of them, but Purdue really couldn't afford to get 2 games down in Big Ten play because that's a really tricky hole to climb out of. We saw that a couple years ago with the Jaden Ivey team, 2022, where Purdue got off to a 1-2 start, and it got really difficult for that team to climb out of that hole. Now, it didn't take care of business particularly well. That team had its problems, but you don't want to get in that hole. Purdue dodged 2 opportunities to do that. Purdue beat Maryland very convincingly. That game was over right away. The way Maryland's offense was operating, there was not a chance that Purdue was going to lose that game unless it just completely self-destructed. And Purdue didn't. It was a boring game. It was a slow game, but Purdue came out of that with a pretty emphatic victory. And then on the flip side with Illinois, it's a very good team. I think Illinois is really good. I don't know what exactly to make of Illinois without Terrence Shannon because we're only 3 games in to that stretch. I don't know if there's enough of a sample size to really determine how big of an impact that is. It's certainly an impact. You don't lose your best player and not have an impact, but Illinois still does some pretty good things. And for Purdue to get that win, it was good. Just some observations from the week here. Lance Jones continues to really show why he's been such a big addition. He did some good things defensively on Jahmir Young. I think the final tally was probably a little bit misleading. Jahmir Young had like 26 points, but a lot of that was in garbage time. A lot of that was when Lance Jones was switched off him or when Lance Jones was on the bench. He was really good defensively in that game. You see him hit big-time shots when Purdue needs it. He's got this uncanny ability to hit shots at really big moments for Purdue. We've seen it a few times this year. Maryland game, he comes out of halftime, knocks down 3 threes in a row to get Purdue off to a great start in the second half. That is huge. That's massive. Illinois game, he goes 7 for 7 from the free throw line. That too is huge. Massive stuff there. He's been a great addition. He has been the perfect piece for Purdue this year. I don't know, I don't know how. Last year I didn't think Purdue could get a ton of great stuff out of the transfer portal because of how much it brought back. I thought that would scare a lot of players away. Lance Jones has been absolutely perfect for what Purdue needed. You're seeing Trey Kaufman-Renn play at a really high level when he gets the opportunity to go score. He's being done no favors by the fact that Zach Edey's on the team. He's not one of those guys who I think really feeds off of Zach Edey being there the way a Lance Jones, a Fletcher Loyer, a Braden Smith does, and even a Mason Gillis to a degree. He needs space to operate, but he was so good for Purdue against Illinois. You saw this too in the Maryland game. He hit a couple of big threes this week. The first possession against Maryland, and then as Illinois is starting to come back a little bit, he knocks down a 3. Now, granted, Illinois still came back a little more, made it closer, but he hit a big 3 at a big moment. You can see why Purdue wants him on the floor as much as possible. And I know at times that Zach Edey, Trey Kaufman-Renn lineup can get a little clunky, but Trey Kaufman-Renn is a really good player. And I think next year, when Zach Edey is not on the team, Trey Kaufman-Renn is going to put together a really, really big year. No doubt, Miles Colvin, first DNP of the year against Illinois, does not play. Really only played a couple minutes against Maryland. It stands out because it's the first time it's happened this year. I'm not necessarily surprised. Playing 10 guys is really hard to do. You kind of saw for the last month or so, Miles Colvin would come in at the under 4 timeout and play the rest of the first half. And then he'd come in for a spot in the second half, and that was about it. That's not a ton of action to really build up a lot of consistency, to build up a lot of comfort in what Purdue's wanting to do. It's not the end of the world. I've said it over and over again. There's going to be a pretty steep adjustment period for Miles Colvin from what he did in high school and playing AAU to what he's doing now at Purdue. That's a massive jump. It's a big jump for everyone. It's a bigger jump for him. He's going to be okay. The ability that's there, he's going to have a fantastic career at Purdue. This year doesn't have to be the year where he breaks onto the scene and has a massive year. I think that'll be next year, and that's not to say he's not going to play this year. He's still going to get action. I'd be really surprised if he didn't play this week, at least in the Penn State game. I think it's just part of it. Camden Heide looks a little more comfortable out there. Ethan Morton's a high-level defender, and there's only so many minutes to go around. You'd love to give him more minutes, but they've got to come from somewhere. It's tough. You don't want to see a guy kind of fall out of the rotation, but it's not a huge surprise, and I don't think it's a huge deal. Braden Smith had some turnovers this week against Maryland and against Illinois. That's part of it when you're as freewheeling and energetic and aggressive as Braden Smith is, and you want that with him because that's what makes him who he is. You got to minimize those turnovers, though. That's what this team has to avoid. That's what this team's entire goal has to be to avoid. You've seen it. You saw it in the Northwestern game. You saw it time and time again, both last year and the year before. When Purdue turns the ball over in bunches, it obviously can't make the shot when it has one of the most efficient offenses in the country, and it can't get an offensive rebound off the miss. it's a double whammy almost because of how good Purdue is on the offensive glass. The turnovers are what you have to watch. If Purdue loses a game this year where it doesn't turn the ball over more than, if it turns it over less than 12 times and Purdue loses that game, I'd be pretty surprised. I'm not saying it can't happen, but I'd be pretty surprised. That's just the key. That's what it comes down to for this team. I thought it was really good, too, on that Trey Kaufman-Wren point a little bit, to see him do that in a game where Zach Edey got in foul trouble for the first time of the year. I'm not going to sit here and dive into officiating from the Illinois game because it's been well discussed on Twitter between the flagrant on Lance Jones, the Coleman Hawkins experience, however you want to describe that. It's been discussed. I'm not going to harp on it much, but Purdue overcame that. Purdue's a better team because it had to experience a game where Zach Edey got in some foul trouble. I do think you need to get him more than 5 shots, even when he is in foul trouble, but that's neither here nor there. Purdue moves forward, sitting at 14-1. We're kind of at the halfway point of the regular season here. 31 games, right? Sounds right. 31, 32 games, and Purdue's at 14-1. It's got a week ahead that is a little interesting. Nebraska is it's just a weird spot. It's a Tuesday, 9 o'clock game, and those are the road games that you have to just hold serve on to go win a Big Ten title. They're not the most exciting. They're not the most energetic. Ken Pom has Purdue as a 9-point favorite. So, Purdue's expected to win, but Nebraska's a tricky team. We all know now you got to keep tabs on Casey Tominaga. He can really get going from 3, as we saw against Indiana last week. He can really get it going. Rink Mast is an interesting post player. Bryce Williams is a pretty solid player as well in that backcourt wing, however you want to describe him. It's a solid team. I don't know how good Nebraska is. You look at their resume at this point. A non-competitive loss to Creighton, losing by double digits to Minnesota doesn't look great, and they got smoked by Wisconsin on Saturday. On the flip side, beat Michigan State, beat Indiana, beat Kansas State comfortably. It's a team you got to keep an eye on at least. Purdue almost lost this game at Pinnacle Bank last year, a place where it's going to be a great turnout, and they're going to be hungry for an upset of number 1. Purdue's going to get that in every road game this year. It dodged it a little bit against Maryland because that place didn't have students, and when Maryland is not particularly good and the students aren't there, it's going to be a ghost town. Maryland is not good, and the students weren't there. That's not going to be the case at Pinnacle Bank. It's going to be a pretty tough atmosphere. Casey Tominaga got red hot last year. That can't happen again. And on the other side, I would think Nebraska will do what it did last year and just throw everything at Zach Edey, make other people beat him. Last year, Fletcher Lawyer was able to do that, I believe, twice. I know he did the game at Nebraska, and if my memory holds, he had a pretty solid game in that game at Mackey as well. He had 27 points in that game. That would qualify as solid. So, that's where Purdue's at there. That's a game Purdue's got to have. Saturday, Purdue gets Penn State. That game shouldn't be interesting. You don't say that to be too rude, but that's reality. Penn State is not a particularly great team. I do think, they're maybe a little better than I thought. They just beat Michigan earlier today as I record this, but it's an 8-7 team. Some really bad losses in there. Lost by 30 to Michigan State. Double digits to VCU. A loss to Bucknell, who's number 320 at Ken Pom. Not ideal. Mike Rhodes really has his work cut out for him in that job. I think it's it's a really tough job to begin with. We knew that. Obviously, Purdue folks, myself included, followed Micah Shrewsbury there closely. That team last year was all seniors. They lost everything in terms of production, and all the young guys on the bench followed Shrews to Notre Dame for the most part. Like Kanye Clary's like the only guy that stuck around. He and Jameel Brown, who doesn't really play. So it's going to be an uphill battle for Penn State. Coming into Mackey, Purdue's got a 22-point spread on KenPom. That's 21-point spread on KenPom now. Purdue should win that fairly comfortably. If you're Purdue here, the big picture of this is just you want to win the Big Ten. Yes, you want to get to the Final Four. You want to win a national championship. The Big Ten is going to be your first domino to fall. You want that to work. You want to have that happen. Just keep stacking wins, keep stacking positive results, see where it takes you. And if you go, 2-0 again this week, then you're at 5-1, and we'll see what happens elsewhere. I wanted to close this episode, not the longest episode. I will say Ryan Walters, 3 commits this weekend on the football side, 2 wide receivers from Georgia, a DB from Colorado. Purdue's still doing some solid stuff in the portal here. It really is. I don't have a ton to add. I haven't really done a big breakdown into these players, but when things slow down a little, I'll probably do a full episode kind of diving into what Purdue got out of the portal and what Purdue lost to the portal. So there's your football stuff for today. But closing this out, the Big Ten. It's a conference that Big Ten basketball is something I love dearly. As I said, I love spending a Tuesday night watching a doubleheader on Big Ten Network. I love it. Big Ten basketball is what I grew up on. It is awesome. It's not a great league this year. It's not a great league at all. Purdue's at the top. And outside of that, it's just like it was last year, where you have one team that's nationally, in that top 5, and after that, it's just a whole lot of question marks. I'm not sure what to make of it. Obviously, as you'll remember, I talked quite a bit about the Big Ten and the NCAA tournament last year. I've done quite a bit of research into that. But just for the conference struggling, I don't think it recruits at a great level. But I think where I'm at right now is that in general, most of these programs are not operating near their ceilings. Like their historical peaks, they're not close to. So since Cassius Winston left, Michigan State has not been great. They had their tournament run to the Sweet 16 last year, but outside of that, it's been pretty underwhelming. Michigan State went 21-13 last year, 23-13 the year before, lost in the second round. The year before that went 15-13, lost in a play-in game of the NCAA tournament. This year, not great. About to be 9-6 because it looks like they're going to lose this game to Northwestern. Losses to James Madison, Wisconsin, Nebraska. It's not going well up there. It's not. I shouldn't say it's not going well because Izzo can always turn it around. But Michigan State is not operating at what it could. Juwan Howard is not working out at Michigan. A loss to Penn State today in the Palestra. I don't know what's going on there. I'd be surprised at this point if he's back next year. I don't think these guys are getting fired, but, is Kevin Willard really going to be the guy at Maryland? I don't know that I'm sold on that one. I don't. If I'm a Maryland fan, I'm not sure I love what I'm seeing right now. Mike Woodson at Indiana is doing fine. Indiana certainly has, a fan base that puts pressure on him to succeed at a high level. He's done better than Archie Miller did, without a doubt. But, are they going to be competing at the level that fan base wants to? I don't know. I think Wisconsin's a solid outfit this year. I think Illinois is a solid outfit this year. Ohio State, I thought looked pretty good. But then again, Ohio State lost to Penn State, and then it lost to Indiana last night, which losing at Assembly Hall is never really a bad loss, but Ohio State could have won that game. I don't think Northwestern is great, but then again, they beat Purdue, and as I'm recording this, they're about to close one out against Michigan State. Just looking at this Big Ten this year, Purdue's in really good shape. Purdue's in a spot to win this thing. Purdue's in a spot to kind of control this. We'll see if that's ultimately what takes place. It's the Big Ten's never as easy as it seems to win, but boy, right now, Purdue looks like it's in really good shape to do so. It's going to be fascinating to watch this league. Minnesota looks a little better. Nebraska looks better. There's no like god awful teams at the bottom besides maybe Penn State and I guess maybe Michigan. But I wonder how many teams are going to make the tournament. I know Lenardi's got like 7 or 8 Big Ten teams in right now. It's way too early to even talk about it. But it's just not the most impressive Big Ten this year. And it's going to be interesting moving forward as 4 new schools join the league, albeit 0 of them really moving the needle in basketball much right now. USC's not good. UCLA's been really bad this year. Washington hasn't been good in a while, and Oregon has fallen off quite a bit since that Final Four run. Going to be interesting to see what happens in this league moving forward. I think if you're Purdue, you really, really like where you're positioned because you're going to lose Zach Edey next year, but I think you like what you have coming back on paper and what you have coming in. Interesting stuff, but that's all I've got for today. Thank you for those of you who spent your time listening to me today. I appreciate you all. Would love to get some questions for the next episode, and I'll tweet out for those as well. But you can send me questions on Twitter @BoilersBeyond. Email them to me, boilersandbeyondpod@gmail.com. We'll be back here next week to talk about the results from Nebraska and Penn State, and then it'll be time to look ahead to the renewal of the Purdue versus Indiana rivalry. Thank you again for listening. I will talk to you next week. Until then, take care.